Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on a conflict that shapes our world every single day, but is almost totally unseen. We're talking about the dollar's invisible war.
So let's just jump right in with a pretty big question. Are you, right now, part of a war you can't even see? Now, I know that sounds a little dramatic, but stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll see just how your everyday life plays a role in this massive global power struggle.
You see, when we think of war, we picture tanks, jets, the whole 9 yards. But what if the most important conflict happening right now isn't fought with missiles, but with much quieter weapons? Things like accounting ledgers, digital payment systems, and that fragile, invisible thing we call trust.
So how in the world did we get here? Well, to really get what's happening now, we've got to look at how this whole thing was built. Think of it as basically an operating system for all the money in the world.
The story really has 2 huge turning points. First, back in 1944, at a conference called Bretton Woods, the US dollar gets anchored to gold. Boom, it's the world's reserve currency. But then, fast forward to 1971. You get the Nixon shock, where President Nixon completely severs that link to gold. And honestly, everyone expected total chaos.
But here's the crazy part. The dollar didn't collapse. No way. It actually got stronger. So why? Well, because it stopped being backed by a shiny yellow metal and started being backed by something way, way more powerful, the actual infrastructure of global trade, energy, and finance.
And this gets us to the absolute core idea here, the dollar operating system. Seriously, stop thinking of the dollar as just money. Start thinking of it like the Windows or the iOS that the entire global economy runs on. It's the underlying code for pretty much all international trade and finance. Okay, now this is where things get really weird, kind of counterintuitive. We have to talk about the power of debt. It's the central paradox of this whole system.
So here's the question that just breaks a lot of people's brains. How can the United States, a country with a national debt over $30 trillion, still be the world's #1 economic power? I mean, it just feels like that shouldn't be possible, right?
Just take a second and let that number sink in. Over $30 trillion. It's almost impossible to even imagine. Everything we're ever taught about economics says that this level of debt should be a complete disaster. But what if it's not?
Well, the way the dollar system is built completely flips that idea on its head. And here's how. See, most countries have to borrow money to fund themselves. The United States, though, it does something different. It's not really just borrowing, it's issuing the safe asset, the global collateral that the rest of the world desperately needs to make their own financial systems work.
So here's the key takeaway. The world isn't really lending money to America. It's parking its extra cash in U.S. treasuries because they are, without a doubt, the safest financial asset on Earth. The global system is literally hungry for U.S. debt. It needs it.
Okay, so if this is an invisible war, how is it actually being fought? Let's take a look at today's economic weapons and the modern battlefield where they're being used.
Let's talk tariffs. We usually think of them as a way to protect jobs, right? But in this war, they're more like financial firewalls. Here's how it works. Step 1, you slap tariffs on a specific supply chain. Step 2, this forces companies to reroute all that trade through countries that are friendly to the dollar. And the result? Well, the total amount of stuff being traded might stay the same, but who gets paid and in what currency totally changes. The power, the utility, it all shifts right back to the dollar. And you know what? This battlefield is changing all the time. If the dollar was originally backed by gold and then later by the oil trade, which created what we call the Petrodollar, what's backing it today? Well, the argument is that it's something totally new, compute. We're talking raw semiconductor and AI power.
And this chart right here shows you exactly why compute is the new front line. A mind-blowing 90% of the world's most advanced computer chips are made in one place, Taiwan. This makes Taiwan more than just a geopolitical hotspot, it's a monetary one. Losing access to that compute power would threaten the very technological edge that holds up the dollar's dominance. So what we're seeing is this huge shift. The old petrodollar system, that was all about controlling the flow of oil. But this new system, you could call it the electro-dollar, is all about controlling the building blocks of the next economy. Things like grid metals, lithium for batteries, and of course, the compute infrastructure that runs everything.
Now, I know this all sounds really big and geopolitical, but what does it actually mean for us, for you and me? Well, that brings us to our final section, living in the architecture, and figuring out your role in all this. Think about it. Every single time you swipe your credit card, or get a paycheck, or make a bank transfer,
You are actively participating in and reinforcing this dollar operating system. You are living inside this architecture. Your small, everyday actions are what make up the trillions of transactions that keep this whole thing humming.
So let's go back to that massive, scary debt for a second. The first huge realization we need to have is a complete reframing of that idea. The debt isn't the flaw in the system, it's the anchor. It's what holds the entire global financial world in place.
And that leads to the second, and maybe even bigger, realization. All the stuff that looks like global economic chaos from the outside, trade wars, currency swings, debt panics, it's not random. This isn't chaos. It's architecture. It's a system. All of it, by design.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty wild thought. We might just be living through the most powerful war in history. One that's going to decide who's on top for generations to come. And it's being fought every single day, not with bombs, but with bank transfers, on a battlefield that you can't see, but one you live on.